Good evening and thank you for joining us. A verdict today in a Thunder Bay manslaughter trial. A jury has found 35-year-old Kesley Jacob not guilty in the death of 53-year-old Barney Beaver.
The two-week trial wrapped up today at the Superior Court of Justice. Beaver died after an altercation at a city hotel in December of 2011, and Jacob spent almost a year in jail before he was released on bail. As Courtney Rutherford tells us, Jacob couldn't wait to leave the courthouse and start his new life as a free man.
Well, my client's probably a little too emotional for words right now, but he is relieved that for the last 2 years, more than 2 years now, he's lived with this. He's glad that it's over, and in his own words, he's just happy to go back on with his life.
Kesley Jacob is a free man. The 12-person jury found Jacob not guilty in the death of Barney Beaver. Jacob, along with his family, breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing the news and grabbed each other with tears in their eyes. The jury deliberated for just 1 hour and 12 minutes before giving their verdict. Jacob's lawyer, George Joseph, was surprised at how quickly the trial wrapped up.
The trial went very smoothly. A lot of cooperation from the Crown, Mr. Kozak in this, who is a very experienced Crown and knowledgeable Crown. The evidence came out in the manner that we hoped it would come out and found our client not guilty.
Over the past 2 weeks, the judge and jury saw a number of people take the stand, including the accused. Jacob testified a physical altercation happened between him and Barney Beaver after Jacob walked in on him violating his passed-out girlfriend at the Victoria Inn. Beaver was found by hotel staff close to 13 hours later on the floor of his hotel room. He succumbed to his injuries 7 days later at the regional hospital. This is the final jury trial at the courthouse behind me before moving into the Consolidated Courthouse April 7th. Justice Terrence Platana told the courtroom they were all part of history these past 2 weeks, but according to Joseph, it was a historic day for his client.
This particular courthouse has a lot of history to it, and I was glad to be part of that history, and I'm glad that everything worked out for Mr. Jacob.
Courtney Rutherford, TBT News.
A plan to convert a natural gas pipeline to carry crude oil will have major implications for the region. TransCanada Pipeline's Energy East project is already creating quite a discussion across the country. And last night, it was Thunder Bay's turn to express their opinions. Jonathan Wilson reports.
TransCanada wants to take roughly 3,000 kilometers of existing natural gas pipeline and convert the line to transport crude oil from Alberta to Quebec and New Brunswick. The line that physically splits northwestern Ontario into two also has created divisions and opinions over the project. Paul Berger of the Citizens United for a Sustainable Planet is worried about the environmental implications.
The pipeline will leak. We know it will leak. We know from TransCanada's record and from pipeline safety in Canada in general that this pipeline at some point will leak. It's an old pipeline. It's going to be carrying diluted bitumen that it wasn't designed for under high pressure at high flow rates. We know it's going to leak. We don't know when and we don't know where.
Tyler Madigan is the vice president of Summit Pipeline, a local company that does a lot of business with TransCanada. He says there will always be environmental concerns, but feels a pipeline is the safest way to transport oil.
It's staggering how many rail cars or how many transport trucks it would require to move the same volume of oil that we would move through this pipeline. And I mean, the safety statistics of a pipeline versus transport or rail, they're not comparable.
A study conducted for TransCanada says the $12 billion project will create thousands of jobs, but just how much employment will be generated in the Northwest is also a matter of opinion.
Locally, it's going to be a huge project. It's going to provide employment opportunities for lots of the local tradesmen and a real boost to our local construction economy in a time when it could use it.
There would be a small number of jobs created as they build new pumping stations. Those pumping stations will be monitored from Calgary, so those jobs will all go away. The biggest job boom here will be when it leaks, and then we have people hired to clean it up, and that's a really bad job creation plan.
There was also a lot of feedback coming from people in this packed room. All of it is being compiled by the Ontario Energy Board and will be passed on to the Minister of Energy and help formulate the province's position on the project. Another meeting will be held by the OAB this summer. Jonathan Wilson, TBT News.
One of the mining companies active in the Ring of Fire says it's happy to see all 9 Matawa chiefs sign an agreement with the province. After months of negotiation, a regional framework was finalized yesterday, a move that some believe will move the Ring of Fire development forward. Mo Levine of KWG Resources believes the agreement is one of the milestones needed to be able to move mining projects forward. He feels the deal between the chiefs and the province is a necessary foundation for everything else to happen.
And hopefully it's the part of the foundation that's needed for the Ontario government to sit down with the First Nations and start planning regional infrastructure. Without a government commitment to regional infrastructure, it's very unlikely that any of the projects in the Ring of Fire will move forward.
KWG believes a rail line is the only feasible way to move chromite deposits out of the proposed mining site. However, the company is supportive of roads to connect the northern communities. Officials from Noront Resources have also issued a statement. President Alan Coutts says they're pleased and encouraged by the signing, and the company expects that mining development will now move forward in a timely fashion.
Well, it looks as though the number of children on a wait list for subsidized daycare has been grossly exaggerated. Today, the District Social Services Board heard the wait list may be half of what was once believed. Dennis Ward has a wrap-up on today's meeting, including an item nobody wanted to address.
Members of the District Social Services Board have been informed of glitches that are boosting the number of kids on the wait list for childcare. A combination of software and human error has led to some children showing up on the list as many as 60 times. DSAB CAO Bill Bradica says the numbers are not at all accurate.
We were showing to the board at one point around 2,200, and it's certainly nowhere near that. And we don't have a final figure yet. We're in the process of verifying the numbers, and we're thinking it's probably going to come in about half of that.
The board also received an update on commercial leases and some of the housing operations. Some of the properties have businesses in them like beauty salons, doctor's offices, and senior centers. But the rent charged hasn't changed since the day the leases were first signed, and in one case has remained the same for 40 years. The plan is to gradually bring the rent up to current market value.
It's going to more than double that $64,000. And, given the economic climate we're in, the Housing Corporation needs as much in revenue as needed in order to maintain these buildings properly.
Something not discussed by the board today was a letter received from the Area 1 municipalities. Those are the smaller communities that surround Thunder Bay that are trying to break away from the DSAB and create their own social services board. They recently met with the minister. However, it doesn't appear the government wants to make a decision on this anytime soon.
Political atmosphere right now could be one thing. He did indicate in a conversation with Mayor Kloosterhuis that there was concern regarding the financial fallout to the remaining municipalities if we were to pull out. But it's our position that we're taking this step and we're taking this approach because of the financial hardship being placed on our municipalities right now. So the argument doesn't really hold a lot of water with me.
Those 6 communities have formed the Lakehead Rural Municipal Committee to not only take up the DSAB issue, but new OPP policing costs and other common concerns. Dennis Ward, TBT News.
Work has begun at the Lakehead Psychiatric Hospital to get the facility ready to take in alternate level of care patients. That move was announced by Health Minister Deb Matthews earlier this month as part of a $14 million plan to help ease gridlock at the regional hospital. St. Joseph's Care Group CEO Tracy Buckler says the plan is to have the 26 beds open in a couple of months. Approximately 22 full-time staff equivalents, including registered nurses and personal support workers, will be hired for the program that's expected to last 2 years. Painting, drywalling, and patching is currently taking place. Buckler says they hope to transfer the 26 transitional care patients to the LPH within the first week of June.
We're already recruiting staff, and that takes some time to work through that process. So we'll get the unit ready, the environment suitable. It's a nice bright area. It's a large space for sure. It's great for temporary occupancy, and then we'll get the staff ready to go. And we're targeting the first week in June, so we hope that we'll be able to achieve that because the challenges aren't going away in terms of capacity.
Buckler says they've received about $2.5 million to operate the unit on a temporary basis.
Ontario's Premier says the Liberals will cooperate with a police probe into 2 cancelled gas plants following police allegations one of Dalton McGuinty's staffers may have committed breach of trust.
These allegations are very disturbing.
Police launched a criminal probe last June after the Conservatives complained that gas plant emails were intentionally deleted by senior staff in McGuinty's office. They allege former Chief of Staff David Livingston gave an outside tech expert access to 24 computers in the Premier's office. The allegations have not been proven in court. Kathleen Wynne says this is a serious issue and her government will continue to cooperate with police. She also says that Livingston has never worked for her government.
Icebreaking was scheduled to start this morning in Thunder Bay's harbor by two U.S. vessels, the Katmai Bay and the Morrow Bay, but a mechanical failure has sent the two cutters back to Duluth for repairs. Harbor Master Guy Jarvis says the 28-inch thick ice might have been a contributing factor to the problems with the Morrow Bay. He says because these vessels are not the main icebreakers, this won't have a major impact or cause serious delays for the shipping season. Jarvis explains what the Port Authority's next steps are.
What we're likely looking at now is that the Alder will come to Thunder Bay. We'll probably delay its arrival so that one of those icebreaking tugs will accompany it to the port so that we always have two assets working. It is more likely, though, that the Pierre Radisson, which is a heavier icebreaker from the Arctic, which is now traveling through the Welland Canal, will likely make its way up to Lake Superior later next week.
Jarvis says even though the Katmai Bay did not experience any mechanical issues, it was sent back with the other vessel to accompany it safely to port in Duluth.
One man is dead following a two-vehicle mishap near Dryden this morning. OPP said the incident occurred on Highway 17 just east of Arab Provincial Park around 7:30 this morning when a passenger vehicle and a commercial collided. The victim has been identified as 24-year-old Taylor Gardner of Dryden. The driver of the second vehicle was not injured.
Hands-on training at a local scrapyard today. Those officers underwent the next stage of training in how to analyze motor vehicle collisions. There are different levels of crash analysis that an officer can be classified and trained in. Phil Darlington has more.
With all the accidents Thunder Bay has seen this winter, it's a fitting time to improve these types of policing skills. Level 2 crash analysis requires officers to determine what is evidence at the collision scene, how to correctly analyze it for clues, and how to document the information they do retrieve.
I mean, collision scenes are interesting because you get there and you see the end outcome, right? And then we have to reverse that back and reconstruct what happened to be able to tell a story leading in proper chronological order of what happened, but doing that from investigating in reverse.
It would be difficult to train on a fresh accident, so in order to train and practice, the officers are studying various wrecked vehicles at a local impound lot.
They've been involved in some sort of an accident, so what we're here to do is to do some information gathering. We're going to do some measurements. We're going to take a look at the vehicles to determine which direction the force came from and hopefully try to figure out what happened at these collisions.
The motor vehicle collision program runs all week for these officers. Yesterday, they were out analyzing different types of skids. Sergeant Reynolds says that the skills they learn here are invaluable in the field because she's seen crashes become more technical in their analysis over the years.
For the officers, it's very integral. For me as a supervisor, it's actually allowing me the chance to set the scene, because when we go to a scene, and even the officers that go to a scene and myself as a first supervisor attending, we'll be able to do this to determine a little bit of what happened, you know, based on the evidence that we see, plus the witness statements and things like that.
It's there's a lot of technical stuff, there's a lot of math, but there's also a lot of different ways you look at things. And I think it's different for each officer, how they approach the scene, how they look at different things. So
these officers will not be dealing with MVCs that involve fatalities. Those are for the level 3 and 4 investigators.
So these officers at the level 2 level, they're doing collisions that are serious, involve injuries, but that are not life-threatening. So collisions that you would go to that would say involve a broken leg or broken arm or broken ribs, those kinds of collisions.
The type of investigations these officers will work on usually take around 2 hours to complete. However, if they choose to move up to level 3 and 4 investigators, they will be working with road closures and investigations that last many hours. Phil Darlington, TBT News.
A 24-year-old city man who's facing charges in connection with the West Fort area fire has been convicted on 2 minor counts in connection with the same incident. The fire occurred on March 3rd and caused minimal damage to a Frederica Street apartment. A suspect was quickly taken into custody and charged with arson and mischief. Those charges are still before the courts, but fire department officials say the suspect has now been convicted on 2 counts of disabling a smoke alarm. He's been fined $1,000 for each infraction.
A pair of Thunder Bay police officers are the subject of some recent court decisions. Constable Jim Morrow was found guilty of discreditable conduct in 2012 in connection with a letter he wrote to a hearing officer. Morrow has been attempting to appeal that decision, but his final effort was dismissed in Toronto last week. Morrow is currently assigned to court duty. His demotion from sergeant to constable will end on May 28th. Meanwhile, Constable Stephen Oster has been committed to trial for assault following a preliminary hearing. That charge came following an alleged altercation with a 12-year-old boy last year at a hockey game. The trial was held on May 5th, or will be held on May 5th. Oster remains on administrative duty until that case is resolved. Ontario seniors face several challenges, such as independent living, financial security, and maintaining a driver's license. The province is now offering a one-day course to seniors, including those here in Thunder Bay, to help with those issues. Today's event was hosted by the OPP, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Community Safety. A lot of the information at that forum involved giving seniors the ability to stay in their own homes, keep driving, and recognize abuse. The forums also allow attendees to voice concerns and identify gaps in service that different support organizations can improve upon. The goal is to give senior citizens what they consider to be their highest priorities.
Very highly. I think nobody likes to be in a hospital. So the longer people can stay into their homes and take care of themselves and live meaningful lives in their own homes is very important to them. And we do see a lot of seniors who want to be in their own home and take care of their own property and do that, but they may just need that little bit of extra help to get them there.
Typically, our biggest problem for seniors is financial abuse. And scams, frauds, powers of attorney, theft by powers of attorney, family members, that type of stuff is really, really the most predominant.
Now, at this particular forum, no one came forward to talk about elder abuse, but Sanders says there were a lot of attendees who were not aware of the support groups and services that exist here in the city.
He's being called the most famous astronaut since Neil Armstrong, and come June 4th, the first Canadian to walk in space will walk on stage at the Thunder Bay Community Auditorium. Colonel Chris Hadfield is a 21-year veteran astronaut and 3-time space traveler. He gained popularity by chronicling his adventures through social media and playing his guitar on the International Space Station. Rochelle Sufi has the story.
This is ground control to Major Tom.
Colonel Chris Hadfield has become a worldwide sensation, capturing the attention of many, including students who are drawn into his space missions. Canada's most famous astronaut will share his experiences of life in space with the local youngsters and the general public during 2 separate events in June. Leadership Thunder Bay President Kristen Oliver says the idea of bringing Hadfield to the Thunder Bay stage originated from her son.
Coming home every day singing David Bowie's Ground Control to Major Tom, and he was so excited and so engaged by Chris Hadfield. I found that he wanted to watch the news, and I knew that this was something really big when we were engaging 9, 10, 11-year-old kids.
Ogden Community School teacher Kelly Green says she is always looking for ways to incorporate real events happening in the world into her curriculum. She says learning about Hadfield's mission to the International Space Station quickly engaged her students and became more of a cross-curriculum program.
My kids were writing about his experiences up there. We created math questions around it.
Green says the song Hadfield sang while in the space station had her whole class singing along with him, which she says made a fantastic learning experience for the kids. Around 1,500 kids from Lakehead Public Schools and the Catholic Board are expected to attend the event, which will be here at the Community Auditorium on June the 4th. He'll also be the special guest of an event that's happening later that night called An Evening with Chris Hadfield. Tickets are on sale for $55 a piece. Rochelle Sufi, TBT News.